Hello and welcome, Nige and Heather of Chupacabra to Talking Bollocks. Hello.
Hello. Great to be here. Thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you. Is it a pleasure to have you as well, Hev?
Oh yeah, yeah. Thank you for having us.
first edit of the podcast quite early there.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. It's okay. For those of you listening, we've had a bit of a chat for about sort of 15 minutes. Well, actually, no, the two of them have had to listen to me droning on. But so we've had a little bit of a tete-a-tete. And so first of all, okay. I have the EP. The reason I have the EP is because I got in touch with Nige. The reason I got in touch with Nige is because DX Ferris is, as we all know, he's everybody's pal, Ferris. And but he was mine first. So I obviously, as soon as the name appeared in the podcast, I started to get interest. And so how'd you get together? I know nothing about the band. Okay. I know nothing other than I've listened to 3 tracks, and Nige, you do the stuff for DX and that's it.
Do you want to do the story, Nige?
Yeah, the band. So basically Heather and I have known each other for a number of years. We've played in a few bands together. Not so much in the thrash area, but more in the kind of, it was more like a doom band, stonery band. And the reason for that was really because our singer was a real kind of, had a real sort of Sabbathy style to his voice. And so that's kind of where it naturally went. And we did a bunch of gigs and we did some recording and stuff, didn't really go anywhere. And as always happens, band broke up. And then COVID happened. And so everything kind of just shut down, obviously. And during COVID, basically, it was, life was pretty boring. And I was like,
I didn't hear from you for like a year, did I?
Yeah, right. I mean, everyone
sort of went to ground for like a year and you were gone.
And I had some personal stuff going on and things. But anyway, during that, I was like, well, I'm gonna write a thrash album, because it's something that, even though I'm an old guy, so I was around in the 80s and remember it all the first time around. But I'd never kind of really sat down and written a thrash album, right? So I thought that's what I'm going to do. So it was almost like it started out as a project of, well, we don't know how long lockdown's going to last. We're not playing live, not going to gigs, not doing anything. I want to do something to kind of keep being creative. And so, so I kind of set myself a weird goal of doing, like, let's see if I can write a song every couple of weeks, write it and record it. Yeah, I have some rudimentary production skills, and a basic kind of studio at home. So I just started writing. And the first couple of songs were actually, I thought were okay. And then the third thing that I wrote is the song that became Burn the Clowns, which is the first single that we released a few weeks ago. Yeah. And that was the moment where I recorded that, and it came pretty quickly, and I recorded it all and arranged the riffs and stuff. There was no vocals at this point. And I was just like, wow, actually, I think that actually sounds pretty good. I was actually quite surprised. And I was like, because usually I think that everything I do is shit, right? But I listened to it and I was like, oh, actually, this is pretty good. And I came back to it like 3 or 4 days later, and I'm like, oh, fuck, this still sounds pretty good. Now, originally what I was going to do was do everything myself. But the problem was there was this big elephant in the room, which is I cannot fucking sing at all. And I don't just mean I can't sing like Bruce Dickinson. I can't do anything. I can't do melodic vocals, Cookie Monster vocals, thrash vocals. I just can't do any of it. So as I kind of went on, I was a bit like, I've got to address this, because otherwise all this music that I was writing, which I felt sounded promising, I was like, well, it's all going to be fucking ruined as soon as I start shouting all over it. So that's when I got in touch with Heather, and it was just like, hey, I'm doing this thing. I really need your vocals. And as I said, so Heather had been Heather's a great bass player, as well as an amazing vocalist. And Heather had been the bass player in the band previously, but she'd also done some backing vocals. And then when we tried to kind of get something else up and running before COVID, but it didn't really kind of go anywhere. But Heather had started doing a bit more vocals than that. And I was thinking, fuck, man, Heather's vocals are great, which is why I got in touch with her. So yeah, Heather, I don't know if you want to carry on at that point.
Yeah, it was just really, really wild, because obviously lockdown happened and nobody really saw anybody, did they? So it was kind of I didn't think anything of it. But yeah, Nige went to ground for like a year, and I just hadn't heard from him. He was just sort of, he'd gone, and then he just popped up. He was like, I've got this thing. What do you reckon? Do you want to try some vocals on it? I listened to it. I was like, holy shit. That's what you've been doing. This is amazing. Yeah, of course I want to do vocals.
Yeah.
So that's how it happened really. It wasn't like a band. There was no intention behind it. It was just purely for the creation of it. It was my chance. It was the first time I'd ever tried lead vocals, so I just had this whole blank canvas to just just go wild with. It was great. So
I can tell you, bang up job.
Thank you.
Absolutely bang up job.
Thank you.
And I have nothing against female vocals. I just don't seem to get along with a huge percentage of female vocalists. But when I do, I absolutely commit, overcommit. But I love the vocals. Honest,
I was wondering which way I was going to go then. Thank you.
Me too. Me too. When I was listening, I was listening and I was thinking, with the greatest, this is the greatest compliment. Well, not a greatest compliment, but you know what I mean. I thought it was a female vocalist. Maybe I've got that wrong. Maybe I got it wrong. Yourself. Maybe I got it wrong. And that's not to say that, I like your vocals because you sound like a bloke. No, that's not it. Because then you start listening, more carefully, and you pick up on the kind of nuances and everything. They kind of like inverted commas giveaways. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, yeah, man, there's great performance, absolutely fantastic performance on all three songs. Given you've never done lead vocals before as well, you can fuck off back to the bass. Yeah. Get back to where you fucking belong.
I love the bass.
Good.
You should play more of it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, man, and I think that it was quite sweet, really, because I remember when I said to Heather, "Hey, do you want to do this?" And Heather was like, "Oh, well, I've never done lead vocals before. I'm a bit nervous." And I remember you saying, like, Heather kept saying, "Please tell me if it's shit. Tell me if it's shit."
You don't know as a vocalist. I never know. I still don't know. I have to get other people to see.
But
I think everything I do is shit.
I remember the first thing, and I was saying, "Yeah, don't worry." Like, and I was kind of thinking, look, it's bound to be better than what I would do, which would really be shit. And I was like, but I remember the first thing that Heather sent through, I think, was just with the music playing in the background and you kind of basically yelling into a phone. And I think
really high tech.
Here's like a first idea. What do you think? And I was a bit like, okay. And I pressed, and to be honest, I can't remember which song it was now, but it may have been like the verse of Burn the Clowns or something, I think. And remember listening to it and just being like, holy fuck, this is amazing. And it was like, and this, I don't mean any disrespect to this, but it was like, it was so much better than I thought it would be. It was like, this is amazing,
Yeah.
And for me, I mean,
that's awesome, though. The fact that you were able to return the compliment, that you sent her something that she thought was amazing, and then she said you something that you thought was amazing. It's like at that point, the two of you have got to be thinking, yeah, this can't just be songs, can it? This can't just can't just exist and lead to nothing. This has got to lead somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
This was 2 years ago now. Is that right? No, 2 or 3? 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years.
So yeah. I mean, there wasn't really any thought behind it at the time. It was just, let's create this thing for the crack. And I think we were both going through a lot at the time. So it was, for me, it was so cathartic. It was like my therapy. It became this dumping ground, all of my rage and all of my, everything, all the kind of feelings that I had that needed to come out. They just went into that. That's why it's so angry sounding. I keep joking with Nige now when I finish the album. I'm not that angry anymore. Like, it's going to be about bunnies and yoga.
Oh dear.
I'm over it now.
Put her back in lockdown. Okay? Yeah. Lock her in the vocal booth for a week. That'll soon get her pissed off.
Me trying to scratch my way out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm kind of worried. There's that I don't know if you're familiar with the movie Almost Famous, but there's that bit at the end of Almost Famous where there's that question is asked, do you have to be in love to write a love song? Do you have to be sad to write a sad song? And I guess for us, it's like, do you have to be really fucking pissed off and in a really bad place personally to write stuff like that? Because I think when we wrote it, certainly again, when I did the music as well, I think I was in a pretty bad place personally. And so I think that anger kind of just came flooding out of me. But now I'm pretty chilled now, so I'm like, and I'm pretty happy. So it's like, well, hey,
I think the answer to that question, which is a typical sort of movie question, and do you know what? I've never watched Almost Famous, and some people have told me that I really, really should because I'm in a band, and other people have told me I really, really shouldn't because I'm in a band. So I'll take that under advisement. But yeah, without a doubt. I mean, put it this way. The golden rule of writing, as in writing comedy, writing narrative, screenplays, whatever. The golden rule is write what you know, because that way it's authentic, it's genuine, and it will ring true. Exactly. So I mean, it's a dumb fucking movie question, basically. Because anything that it has to be genuine, and that's why that's when people really fall for a song and really fall for a band. Is it's genuine? They identify with the sentiment, the feelings, the subtext, and place their own emotions into it, and their own thoughts, and make every song about them and how it applies to their life. But that's what we all do,
Right.
That's what it's for, isn't it? Really? Yeah, I totally agree. It's got to be authentic. It's got to be from the heart.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, you can't be a miner and write a song about being a doctor.
Yeah,
right. It's that simple. It's that simple.
I guess that's why a lot of bands that make it really big on their first, like so Guns N' Roses being a classic example, right? But bands that make it really big on their first album and all the songs are about being on the streets and struggling and this, that, and the other. And then how can they do that when they're suddenly all fucking millionaires and living in Hollywood?
The example I always use, which massively dates me, is Queensryche, which is Operation Mindcrime, one of the top 10 greatest metal albums of all time.
I agree, man.
Absolute genius. People getting killed all over the place. Still don't understand the concept. Doesn't matter. Don't care. And then second album, Empire. Oh dear. Yeah, because massive success. Bit of time off, and all of a sudden, I'm coming home to my jet city.
It's one of the biggest drop-offs in form. I agree with you. I think Operation
an attitude, I mean, and it's like Operation Mindcrime is this fucking violent opera, and then you get an album of just sugar.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Right. I hope you're not listening, Jeff. By the way, you are amazing.
No, I've got a lot to be angry about. There is plenty where that came from. I just need to tap into it again.
Yeah, it's just getting but I think as well, lyrically, I think the lyric, I mean, I guess I would think this, but I think lyrically the lyrics are amazing as well, because I think we wanted, for me, I wanted it to kind of have one foot in like old school thrash, right? Which is what I grew up listening to.
Yeah, which it does. It's an old school arrangement.
Exactly, but I wanted it to have the other foot in more modern stuff, which I don't mean like modern metal, but I mean more like the way that Heather's delivery and the lyrics particularly. I guess I didn't want to just go down the old school thrash route of let's talk about Satan and let's talk about sacrificing virgins and all that kind of stuff. So I wanted it to have a vibe of old school, but not necessarily vocally or lyrically or production wise either, I guess we realized. Because I think originally I was just going to produce it all at home, and it was going to have a pretty old school vibe, simply because I don't have the skills to make a really modern sounding record, right? Yeah. But I think because the vocals ended up with it sounding a little bit more modern, I think Heather and I spoke, and it was a bit like, well, hey, maybe we should get somebody who actually produced this properly. So we recorded everything at home, but then we got someone to sort of basically mix it and master it, and this guy.
Winter of Think Studios is amazing. I was using him with another band that I was in, and he did such an amazing job with the other band. I was like, this guy, we have to get it produced through Winter, because he's brilliant.
But the thing is, as well, is you could, sorry to cut across you there, Hev. I thought you'd finished. The thing is, if you've got the performances, then you can hand it to somebody who will make it sound amazing. But if you can't fix it in the mix, you can't. If you haven't got the foundations, there's no point putting a fucking roof on it. So that the actual core performances and the core sounds have all got to be there, which they were. So really, whilst he's done an amazing job, I'm sure if he was on here, he'd be going, guys, I mean, look what you gave me. You know, I was like, I'm, you know, that was a dream. So you can see how it's kind of come together.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think it was, and I think I'm really pleased that we did that, because I wasn't sure to start with whether it was going to lose something by losing the kind of old school thrash vibe that I had originally been after. I wasn't sure whether it was going to be an improvement, but actually when Winter sent back the first mixes and said, see what you think of this, and I was literally like, holy fuck, this sounds incredible. And I think we made a couple of tweaks here and there. I think there was a couple of guitar things maybe, but there wasn't much, was there? I don't think we changed much. We just said to
you nailed it.
This sounds fucking huge and way better than I ever could have done, you know.
Yeah. And that is just, you know, when you hear something, you think, fucking hell, is that us?
I know.
I love that when it comes back from the studio.
Yeah. Jesus, is that me? Oh God.
And I think that's really strange as well for me, as you know, because as we said earlier, you know, this started out as really, in some respects, just a way of me alleviating some boredom and venting some inner rage during lockdown. So for it to go, I never expected it to even sound as good as it did once Heather started singing on it, and then didn't expect it to sound as good again once Winter got hold of it, you know, and produced it properly. And then obviously doing things like talking to you now, and this was never in the plan when or the thing with DX, with DX Ferris, all that stuff. I mean, none of that was anywhere near. There wasn't any kind of intention or plan. It's just all kind of happened, really.
And the weird thing is, when we were in lockdown, none of us would have been. You know, none of us were sat there going, I wonder what the silver lining to all of this is.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Because it was just like black and
just
horrible.
Shit, wasn't it?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
But I mean, one of the benefits. Now, speaking of the sound, I have to say, first time I heard it from a production point of view and from an actual sound of the band, I was getting Decapitated vibes.
Oh, Decap. Thank you very much.
Oh, wow.
Great
Yes.
band.
Yeah. Not so much the Cancer album, but more the Anti-Cult album. It just kind of sounded like that, which I really liked. And I've got to be honest, my main gripe with the EP is it's only 3 songs.
Yeah.
Also,
I haven't finished the rest.
Yeah. So basically, the plan is. So as I said, you know, the plan for what I did was write an album, and so there's actually 11 songs written. Good. Musically. I think a couple of them we've gone back to more recently and thought they're probably not quite up to standard of the others. So that leaves 9. We've done these 3. I think one song there's a song called Queen of Swords, which is I think half written, vocal. So basically,
most of that's done. Apart from the breakdown, that's all done. The vocals, and also. The new Maleficarum's mainly done.
Yeah,
so there's two that are there.
Yeah, so
this is weird. I feel like I feel like I've slipped into a band meeting Zoom.
No, not at all. It's like the music is basically written for let's say 9 songs. It's really just a question of, and the plan was, let's get 3 songs out. You know,
right?
See what the reaction is, and the reaction's been, I mean, mind blowing, really. And then the plan now, of course, is to then immediately, because the reaction's been so good from people we don't know, such as yourself, as well as obviously, you know, I was expecting it to be, you know, I'm relatively active on, you know, in metal Twitter or whatever, and I was expecting maybe to get a few kind of people saying, oh yeah, Nige, well done, you know, nice job. But it kind of got much bigger than that. We've got so much great feedback from people who don't know us and had no reason to sort of message us and say, this sounds really good.
That's awesome.
So that's why we're now going to do another 3. We're going to do another 3 songs, I think, pretty quickly and release them before the end of the year. And then how we package that, I don't know. Whether we do all 6 and do it almost like a mini album, so the 3 that have been released plus 3 more, or whether we release 3 new ones separately and then do it packaged, I don't know. But yeah. There's more music coming.
So have you approached any labels or anything like that?
We've had initial conversations with a couple of labels about doing some stuff. They approached us actually.
Cool.
So I can't really say any more at the moment.
No. Well, we'll talk about that when we've finished.
Yeah. So I don't know is the answer, but at the moment it's really just focusing on. So the next single's coming out on the 11th of July. That's called Final Time to Die, and then the full EP is released on the 4th of August. And then I think we're going to be starting recording the next, finishing off the vocals for the next 3 with a view to, I think, getting that out before Christmas. So
cool. So is that 2 EPs and an album, or is that an EP and an album, or?
Yeah, as I said, I don't know really. I think we might release them, partly depends on what happens with any sort of label discussions. We might release them as another standalone 3 song EP, or we might package the 3 together that we've just done with 3 more and do that. Then that would become, I guess, a little bit like a mini album or a short album. That's, same length as Radiant Blood, is long enough, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think these days, there's so many albums, particularly in this genre, that are getting released that are only kind of 25, 30, 32 minutes. It's not like albums are all 50 minutes long these days.
Well, we're back to Decapitated again. I mean, look, it depends, doesn't it? It depends who you are. I mean, there's plenty of, there's plenty of bands putting out ridiculously long albums, Metallica. But there's plenty of bands that, and there's plenty of bands putting out short albums. It's entirely up to you what feels best, what you're comfortable with. And without having a label, you've got nobody to tell you how it's going to be done.
Exactly. We're just, I think if the past kind of few months have taught me anything, it's just like you can never really plan for what's going to happen, because things can go off in weird directions. And so I don't know yet. I mean, we need to, obviously Heather and I need to talk about it, and any conversations with labels might have an impact as well. And we've used a really great PR company, Clawhammer, who are based in the US, but they've been really great at getting it on the radio and sending it out to various media outlets and so on. So they may well have an opinion as well. But I think, the answer is we haven't decided yet, but it will be something. There'll be new stuff coming before Christmas, in some shape.
Cool. Well, I look forward to it. And I mean, so is there any? So I'd say we'll have the label discussion off air. What about full lineup and gigging and stuff like that? Is that in the future?
Well, I mean, it's kind of weird because I'd sort of done, Heather and I have both played loads and loads of gigs over the years together and in different bands. And I'd kind of not really had that in my mind. I'd been a bit like, I'm kind of done with playing live. And because I've always been much more interested in the creative bit than
the studio bit. And
I know playing live is, what everyone's supposed to do and this kind of thing. But for me, I love the sort of writing process. I love starting from like a blank Logic file or whatever, and then 2 hours later you end up with a bunch of great riffs, and then it's like, oh, okay, that's cool. So,
well, you're basically the dude who leaves after the first tour and goes, well, do you know what? I understand. I love this bit, but I can't be having this bit. So, I'm off.
I was in a band in this would have been about early 2000s, I think. It wasn't a metal band. It was more kind of like a rock. Not exactly indie, but it had some rocky elements, of Zeppelin elements. But anyway, I was in a band about early 2000s, and we did a 10-day tour of northern Europe, so Slovenia and various places in Italy and so on.
Yeah.
At the end of 10 days, I was like, "Fuck this! Just fucking." I'm fucking going home, man. So,
and that was pre-Brexit, when it was easy to do that shit.
Oh man, I'm just like, I don't know. But having said that, I think again, the initial intention was for it just to be a home recording project.
Yeah.
And while it's true that I still like that side of it the best, I think because of the way things have developed, I think, it's something that we're gonna be considering if we can find the right people to complete the lineup. If we can, so it's like at the moment, I would say the priority is getting the music out there and finishing off the recordings and getting those out there.
Yeah.
But in the future, who knows?
Meanwhile, I would love to go out and gig.
Yeah.
So we're like different ends that I'm like, Nige, come on.
Do
I
it.
really want to scream fuck the patriarchy at loads of people.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe this is your moment, Nige, to
So
be the
we're-
Svengali behind the scenes, and basically just like you put the band together that's going to tour the songs that you wrote while you can stay at home and
I
write
have
some more.
suggested that, actually. Yeah, we'll get a stand-in.
Yeah,
We've got Alex on lead guitar, who's great. So it would only take a drummer.
Drummer and
Wait,
yeah.
Hmm?
Drummer and either another guitar player or bass, depending on what I did, if I was to do it, you know.
Yeah, and thrash drummers, good thrash drummers don't believe the hype, are hard to find. There's plenty of drummers there's plenty of drummers who say they can play thrash, and then you find out they can't.
Yeah, do it tight and with flair. Yeah,
exactly, and also consistently.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like, wow, he's fucking amazing, but he needs like a 20-minute rest between each song.
Because his shins are on fire.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's not going to work live. I mean, I do like to chat between songs, but for fuck's sake,
get the drummer massage in between.
Yeah. Our entire set, Goddess, The Fear, Motherly Love, Good Night.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not something, you know, it was something that I was, a year ago I would have been like, or even 6 months ago would have been not interested, whereas now it's a bit more like, well, maybe it's something I could think about doing.
Yeah.
I'll talk him round.
Yeah.
I'm wearing him down slowly.
Heather's annoyingly persive.
Well, I'm seeing
a fan joke where I just pester him continually. I'm like, we're being offered this gig. No, it's quite funny.
Well, I've seen. Yeah, I've definitely. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, it just needs to be a big enough gig, I think, and I'll get him.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I'll turn down, and then we'll be live.
I think the other thing is, you know, we've all got jobs and life responsibilities and stuff. So I don't think we're not in a position where we can all just fuck off on tour for 3 weeks, you know?
Yes.
Not like the same. In a way, that kind of makes it a bit easier for me to swallow as well, because doing the odd gig here and there, if they were the right gigs, I think that would be really cool. In fact, you know, somebody that I think, I wouldn't say that this was modeled after them, but Hellripper, you know, James McBain, I don't know how familiar you are with Hellripper, but that started as that's just him, right? So he does I don't know if you're that familiar with him, but he does everything himself, really everything, vocals, all the music, writing, production. Yeah. Now he's got a label, but I think for the first sort of 4 or 5 years and a few releases, it was just him. And to my knowledge, he didn't play live at all until he started getting to a size that was, or a traction that was big enough where they could start not exactly cherry picking what they did, but they weren't going round on tour playing to one person in you know, Scunthorpe, a rainy Wednesday or something, you know. Yeah. So I'd like that model. I would quite like to be able to do, because I think, you know, I've played in fucking tons of bands, and so's Heather. You know, we've all done, and I'm sure you have as well, back when you guys started. You know, you've all done gigs where you play to one person and it's all a bit of a waste of time and it's a bit demoralizing, you know. Or maybe
believe it or not, the loads of bands I've been in are 2. Acid Rain. No way. And when Acid Rain packed up, I went and did 3 years in Newcastle in a band called Strange Thing. And they're the only 2 bands I've ever been in. And when we played our first gig with Acid Rain, we'd already signed a management deal, signed a record deal, and recorded our first album. Then we played our first ever show.
That's amazing.
Yeah, well, the thing is, there was no scene near us at all. So all we did was go back to the rehearsal room every Sunday, play our songs, and then get rid of them. Yeah. And play, and then write better ones, and then write better ones, and then write better ones. There was no gigs. There was no working towards a gig. There was nothing to distract from the art of songwriting. So we just kept writing songs, and they just kept getting better. And that's the point where we thought, do you know what? We should record a demo, because, you know, this as far as we're concerned, this is good enough. So it was an absolutely bizarre situation, which the weird thing is, now you can do that as well, because exactly, you can put it out there and you don't actually have to do any gigs until you've actually, you've built it up over socials, or, you've got a good buzz, and then you can start gigging. Whereas, like I said, back then, normally it was gig, and eventually you get somewhere.
Yeah.
But we just did it all backwards.
The way around. That's really interesting. I didn't realize that about you guys, because I was aware of you guys from back in the day,
Yeah, it's a weird one. It's a weird one. We're also the only band, Music for Nations, ever signed in their entire history, who were well, what's the phrase? We weren't connected. We were the only band who were they knew nothing about, that we sent a demo tape in and they went, yeah, we're going to sign this band. Everybody else came through a manager or through somebody who knew, or like basically contacts.
Yeah.
But we were the only ones who they signed completely unknown. And
was the demo tape that you sent in, was that what effectively became the Moshkinstein EP, or was there something before
that? No, that's exactly what it was. Right. And the demo, again, regular listeners will be bored by this, but the demo was professionally produced. It had labels on both sides. It had a full color cover. Yeah. Because my thinking was, at that time, there's going to be a desk full of C90s. Yeah. And then there's going to be one that looks like it's already on a label. What's that doing there? It will stand out a mile.
That's good thinking.
Well, funnily enough, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, that's just good marketing, though, right? Which essentially is, you're right, it's exactly what happens now. Bands can basically present stuff just like we have. We don't have a label. We have a bit of PR help for this, but we don't have a label. We don't have management. We recorded it at home. It was just, and you can do that. And it's,
I just want to say that says a lot about your music as well, being the only man that got signed off of a demo. That is amazing. That says a lot about what was on that demo, doesn't it?
Well, I think it does, but I also think it says a lot about labels as well. Certainly back then, where it's like, can I be asked to listen to demo tapes when I've got management ringing me all the time, and all these people who are constantly going at you saying, there's this band, come see this band, come see that. So I can see, if I was a human being and I was in that job, what do you want to do? Slog through a load of fucking tapes that are mostly 99% shit? Yeah. Or do you want to go and see bands that have been pre-approved by somebody else and said, this is worth your time?
It's like a filter, isn't it?
Everyone's going to go down that route.
Yeah.
And that's why I was convinced that we had to do something to make it stand out. But anyway, this interview is not about me at all. It's about you guys, and I've slipped into that, so I do apologize. So the funny thing is, Nige, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but you've got a bit of a track record, because as listeners to this interview will realize, and Hev probably already knows, it seems that your first answer is no, and then you slowly soften the no, and then it becomes a yes. So I look forward to the gigs, basically, is what I'm saying.
I'll wear him down.
I told you that Heather's like scarily persuasive, even from a distance.
Yeah, exactly. It's only a matter of time.
I was going to say, well, from a distance. So whereabouts are you guys based?
Oh, well, we're both from Bristol, but just in different, just in kind of each side of Bristol, basically.
Oh,
yeah, you can feel the vibes across the city, though. I'm just here, like.
Yeah. How long is it in a tractor from your house to hers?
Well, you have to pick up the cider.
Somebody cheaper in the way.
Yeah. No. It's like you're in a sports car. You're just stuck behind a tractor.
Yeah.
So, well, obviously, Bristol. I can think of some other thrash bands from around the area.
Well, Onslaught obviously is the biggest thrash band, or certainly, I guess Onslaught, you guys, Zentrix, and Sabbath, I suppose, are the four. If there was a big four of UK thrash, I guess that'd be those four. And obviously, Onslaught is from here. Great band, obviously. Yeah. But the Bristol scene's really cool at the moment as well. I think not just in the thrash area, but just generally. We've got an amazing sort of metal pub called the Griffin, which is it's just fantastic. It's a tiny kind of triangular place, and the downstairs is a bar, and the guy John, the owner, he basically stocks all these really obscure craft beers. Then upstairs is an equally small triangular venue space, and literally if it's got 30 people in there, it's rammed, you know.
Right.
And he gets really big bands in there. It's amazing. Like the bands that play, they think this is just wild, you know. It's just got that culture behind it where people want to play.
That's awesome.
It's great.
Yes. Heather and I have both played there a bunch of times with Witch, this doom metal band we were in, but also separately. And then literally just around the corner from there is, I think, the Southwest, and probably one of the only UK record stores that just stocks metal.
Wow.
Called Black City Records, which is just, I think, set up by a guy called David Savage, no relation, weirdly.
No relation.
At least as far as we know. I haven't actually ever asked him, but I don't think so. Yeah, so he basically set that up, I think, during lockdown or towards the end of lockdown. He just thought, fuck it, I'm gonna open a metal record store, and it's just brilliant.
It's great. Proper record shop.
That's amazing.
Black City Records.
That's amazing.
Black City Records and the Griffin are literally 2 minutes walk from each other, so it's kind of got a nice little kind of metal scene going on in this very small little corner of Bristol, you know.
It's a great community as well. There's a really good, solid metal community here, which is great, and a lot of support for the local bands, and it's a really nice scene.
Oh, that's excellent
to be in a band.
Yeah. So, well, it's starting to sound more and more like you know, you're going to get tempted into playing some shows. That's for sure. It's going to be weird playing these songs in a room with like actual for real, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it is, because again, they existed. Well, they still only exist, but you know, they existed as a home recording thing, you know.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like every step that we've taken on this has been really, really weird, you know, like getting it properly produced, and then the tie-up with Ferris as well, which was kind of just random and fantastic, you know. And he's such a cool guy.
I was going to ask about that as well, because that like came from nowhere, and I was like, oh right, because that's where I first heard of you, and funnily enough, I was like, he's using a guitarist from a UK thrash band, and I haven't heard of them. What's going on here?
Well, so it was kind of, I mean, it's a bit of a nerdy story, really. But so basically, so basically, I think we were just in touch we just became Twitter friends, right, as you do. And so my day job is basically like an editor and writer and that kind of thing, right? So I'd obviously anything
that anybody would know, it's worth, you know.
No, I basically write marketing stuff for lawyers, mainly in the US, which is really random. But so it's basically it's in the legal sector.
But that must be really useful as well, because if you were writing adverts for lawyers in the UK, it would be so restricted. It'd be like literally you'd have a list of 30 words you're allowed to use, and that's that. Whereas I imagine if it's for lawyers in the States, they should fucking say whatever they like, and they'll just read out a really speedy disclaimer at the end of it.
Yeah, well, it's generally, I mean, I don't want to talk about my job too much.
Yeah, fair enough, mate.
But it's American lawyers, I think, are generally really good at kind of blowing their own trumpet. So if it's my job to basically say to them or ask them, tell me why you're great at what you do. And they're really, really good at that. So anyway, so that's my day job, sort of editing and writing and so on.
Yeah.
I obviously read Ferris's previous books, you know, the Rain in Blood book, and then the 66 2/3, the long form, the first edition of the Slayer biography.
Right with you, buddy. Yeah,
it's brilliant, right? And I messaged him at some point, and I can't remember how this happened, but I think I messaged him at some point and said, hey, in case you're thinking about doing another edition, or maybe I already knew about the new edition, I said, if you need anyone to help you edit the book, then I'm an editor. That's my day job. And also, obviously, I'm a massive Slayer fan, so I can hopefully spot things that maybe are, you know. And I was really surprised that he replied after like an hour, and he was like, yeah, man, that would be really cool. You know, I'm approaching the end of the manuscript and I've nearly finished writing the updated version, blah, blah, blah. I'll send it to you. And I was like, okay, cool. So we kind of just got friendly because of that. And I think at some point, so the first step in kind of getting this EP released was I sent it to a few people on Twitter and that I kind of knew and I trusted. So I sent it to James from Hellripper. I sent it to a few guys in various podcasts. And I sent it to Ferris. And
by the way, everybody, he didn't send it to me. I had to track it down myself.
But I didn't know you then, man. No, I would have sent it to you.
Next time, you'd be the first one to get it.
Yeah, absolutely, you will. So yeah, I basically kind of sent it to a few people and said, "Hey, what do you think of this? Do you think it's worth releasing?" Because remember what I said before about I think everything we do is average at best. And everyone came back saying, "Yes, it's really great." But so I sent it to Ferris and I said, "Hey, look, I've got this thing that we've recorded and it's ready to go." And really, obviously, Ferris is a big Slayer fan. I was like, "I'd really appreciate your opinion." And he came back, and I think it was almost his feedback that kind of made me really want to get it out there, because what he said he said, "This is fucking great." He said, "Is this going to be the next Rain in Blood? No, but is it good enough to be out there amongst other stuff that's being released and sort of stand,
stand on its own 2 feet?"
Yeah, and he said, "Absolutely." He said, "You've got to get this out there." And I was like, "Fuck, that's really cool," because I think, in the past, I'd always been a sort of like, well, if it's not as good as Rain in Blood and it's not as good as Peace Self, what's the point? But actually, that's kind of a really stupid. I realized that was a stupid,
impossible goal, man.
There would be no thrash scene because every band would go, "There's no point."
So that was that. So basically, so that was that. But then I didn't hear anything from him for a couple of months about the manuscript thing. So I just thought, oh, okay, well, maybe he decided to not, whatever. And then one day I literally got an email from him saying, "Hey man, 2 things. First of all, manuscript's ready. If you've got time, would you mind editing it and reviewing it and pick it apart and so on?" And he said, "Point 2, I'm launching an audiobook and a podcast to go with the launch of the new edition of the book. Would you guys be willing to provide incidental music? Both, he said, I'd really like to use some Chupacabra stuff, but also can you basically record some snippets of Slayer songs and send them to me?" And what he wanted to do was almost do it in a bit of a broken down way. So he said, like, can you record, so for example, I've done like Hallowates and Rain in Blood, for example, record all the 2 guitars, bass, drums, sending me the whole thing. But then also, can you send me the individual stems? So he's got like 1 guitar or just the bass or just the drums. And I was just like, wow, that's really cool. So over the following, I don't know, 3 weeks or month or so, I basically edited this whole manuscript.
Wow.
And also recorded a bunch of little Slayer snippets, and also sent him the full EP stuff, which he's used here and there as well. So yeah, so it kind of came out of absolutely nowhere. I didn't know him at all, but now we've become I've never met him, but we've kind of become good buddies. And I'm if I ever find my way over to, I think he's in Akron, Ohio. If I ever find myself over there, then I'm buying him the biggest fucking beer imaginable,
Well, do you know what this is? But this is how life works these days. I mean, I consider him a friend, and how did we meet? I wanted to get him on Talking Bollocks because I'd already got the Rain in Blood book. I got Jeff and Dave years as soon as it came out, and I just thought, this guy's a Slayer authority. I need him on the podcast. And I don't know how many years ago that was, but funnily enough, episode with him coming up very, very soon.
Oh, cool.
And we did a Zoom. That's the first time I've even known what he looks like.
Yeah, I know.
So that was weird.
He doesn't look anything like he sounds either.
No.
But he's just such a good dude, and he's been so generous to us in terms of like featuring our music, giving us a big shout out. And he's just a cool, like Heather was saying before about the metal community being so so great. I just think he's such a good dude,
Yeah, and also it's worth mentioning at this point, if you're listening and you wonder who this guy is, DX Ferris wrote a book all about Rain in Blood. He wrote a book called 66 2/3 the Jeff and Dave years, which is about to be updated, which is the best book on Slayer I've ever read. It's brilliantly researched. You can find the answers to most questions you've ever had about Slayer are written right there. And he's a absolutely top dude, and he's now got a podcast called Talkin Slayer. And you should go and subscribe. I'm a Patreon subscriber to that podcast. It's awesome. If you like Slayer, there's absolutely no reason why you're not subscribed to it. So get to it now. Anyway, enough of that. Yeah. Hev, you've been a singer before, and you were suddenly given thrash metal to sing, and by the sounds of it, you got in touch with your inner demons.
Yeah, there was a lot in there that poured out.
Was that conscious, or was it literally like when Nige was putting, the Clowns tune together, when he was putting that together and going, oh wow, this is actually, was it a kind of similar vibe for you, or did it take a bit of work?
Sorry, I think it'd be impossible.
Did it take a bit of work?
If I've got a lot of emotion in me, it's coming out in music in one way or another. I couldn't. Yeah, I kind of, when I'm creating something, I have to kind of get out of my own way a little bit. I don't know if that sounds a bit weird. Like if I try and think, oh, I want to write a song about this, I want it to sound like that, it's shit. Yeah. Like and I've learned over time, over the years, like the most enjoyment I get out of it, and actually that what creates better music, I think, is if I just kind of zone into some emotions and some feelings about the thing, and what will come out won't necessarily be about that thing, and quite often it's analogy. Burn the Clowns is quite analogous, and so is Fortified by Ashes, but the emotions behind it are everything that was bubbling away in me, that I was going through. So it's kind of really cathartic. It's like my therapy. It's like all this stuff that just like vented out. Yeah, it's great.
But we're back to that point again, aren't we, where it's got to be genuine. It's got to come from deep within.
For two reasons: for the music and also for my experience. Because what's the point if it's not? It's not. This isn't my career. This is what I do. This is like my hobby, my love in life. I don't. It's not about. As Nige said, we didn't have any plans for it. It's not about writing good music. It's about just wanting to create something real.
Yeah, I mean, I know what you mean, because initially you just want to have some songs to play to people and go, what do you think of this? And you just want to see the look on their face when they go like, is that you? Do you know what I mean? It's like and the buzz you get from playing those songs just to the inner circle the first time, and you're getting all of that, positivity, and which is great, and that's what you need. You need that inner sanctum, because I think too many bands will get to your stage and go, right, you throw it out there and everyone's told you how good it is, and you put it out there, and then you get the tidal wave of negativity.
Yeah, right.
Then you go like, fucking hell, guys, really? I mean, this is so done, and it's like, it's those bands who don't have an inner sanctum that I feel sorry for.
Yeah. It's quite strange though, because it's so deeply personal on an emotional level for me. It's like it's got like the bones and blood of me in that music. So it wasn't really about wanting people's reactions or wanting to share it. It was really deeply personal. So it's really exposing to me that it's being released, especially the next one. It's it's quite a strange experience. It's a little bit different to other band stuff I've done, because it was like a private recording. All of that stuff was out of the way, so it was really just my space, So
well, the good news is
experience. I love it. I love that people are digging it. That is amazing, and it's amazing for Nige, because what he's done, I just think is just bloody brilliant, and he deserves that. But for me, it's like, oh, this is all my inner.
Well,
I hope people can't make out what I'm saying.
Well, the good news is that nobody will know what it's like. Your experience of that tune, no one else is going to have that.
The author,
I sort of get it, but I'm long down the route of, for want of a better phrase, exposing myself to and my emotions to a wider audience, especially in stand-up. I mean, there's no hiding place there. So
I've often thought that stand-up is almost the bravest thing that anyone can do on stage.
Now you see that
really?
that I have an issue with.
Really?
So, yes, yeah. There is not one single comedian alive who is fucking brave. The reason they're on stage is their ego means they have to be there. They don't have a choice.
That's interesting.
They are there because they have to be there. Even comedians who don't like who don't like people looking at them, who are, I mean, because if you think musicians are a bunch of freaks and weirdos, you're fucking wrong. Yeah, you go into a comedy dressing room, there they are. And a unique bunch of misfits. But people absolutely paralyzed with fear and nerves, forcing themselves out there because they have to do it. And the reason it's not brave if you're choosing to do it, but speaking in public is something that most people have a natural fear of, and most people have also got a genuine fear of it because they've been forced to do it. Anyone's experience of public speaking is being forced to do it, forced into the front of the class, forced at assembly, forced in front of a meeting, forced in front of colleagues, forced to pit. Everybody's always pushed to do it. And 99% of people don't want to do it. Right. So that's completely understandable. But the 1% is who are doing it and fucking love it. They are not brave at all. They have to be there.
That's really interesting.
That's like validation, ego validation.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like an addiction to external validation, just having to get up and
a lot of comedians are rubbish off stage, but when they're on stage, they're in charge. Everybody likes them. It's the unconditional love of strangers. And that's what it's all about. And the thing is that having met a fireman, and he didn't tell me that he thought I was brave. He just said he couldn't do it. And I said, yeah, but we know the score, don't we? And we had a little chat, and he was like, yeah, I'm not brave, not in the least. I said, yeah, you're addicted to fucking running into a burning building while everyone's running out. He was like, I fucking love it.
Wow. That's so interesting.
He said, I'm not brave. I fucking love doing this. I have to run in to it. He said, like, if I'm driving down and I see a fire, I have to pull over and try and help. It's like, it's just, I can't explain it, And so people do, it doesn't always lead to being on a stage. People have their thing, and people listening to this have their thing that they have to do. And unfortunately, mostly society takes advantage of these people because you have to be a nurse, you have to be a doctor, you have to be a teacher. And so you have to live on shit money.
Yeah.
And no hours, and no time to yourself. But that's why the state takes advantage of these people, because they know they can, because they know they have to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right.
Usually, invariably, a calling is really badly paid because society in general takes advantage of these people. And yet they're in really important areas, like people who are going to look after your kids and people who are going to make sure you don't die. They're quite important, and they're some of the lowest paid people in the fucking planet.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
But hey, I don't know how the fuck we've ended up here. My apologies. I've completely fucking taken over your interview. Oh dear. Well, just back to your vocals. I mean, if you have you thought about doing this live?
So I was in another band doing live. Actually, after Chupacabra, I joined a band called Cybervoid, and I did a bunch of gigs for Cybervoid that also went down really well, which was great. Actually, I did a gig the other night for the Metal to the Masses finals, which I had 4 days notice for, which was hilarious, for my friend's band Virtual Reality. He turned up on Monday, was like, our singer can't make the finals, can you fill in? I was like, when's the gig? He's like, Saturday. I was like, oh Christ, that's only a few days. Give me the tracks then, I'll see what I can do. He's like, there aren't any, you just got to make it up. I was like, well, that's too hilarious not to do. Yeah, I'm in.
Good on you.
Then when we had band practice on Friday night, went down the Griffin, got absolutely trashed, and I was in my hangover pit until an hour before the gig, before we went on stage. Dragged myself out at the last minute and turned up.
Bloody hell, that's pretty epic. That
ad-libbed the whole gig. It was hilarious. It was the weirdest gig I've ever done.
I can imagine.
There's no words. I just made up utter bollocks.
So they've got a singer who just makes it up, or they've
no, they've got proper songs, but there's no recordings of them. So they had nothing to show me.
Right, okay, right, yeah.
So and I didn't really get a chance to listen to the songs very much either.
But it's quite a good idea. If you think about it, because I was thinking, like, if somebody comes to me and says, you got 4 days and we're doing a gig, I'm like, oh right. But it's all right, you don't have to learn any lyrics, you can just make it up. I'll be like, oh right, okay. I mean,
that's all you can do, right?
Oh, I can get on board with that.
It's tech metal as well, right? Which made it even more hilarious. It's a tech metal band.
Oh fucking hell, that's a mission and a half.
So funny. It was brilliant. I enjoyed it so much. It was a really interesting thing to do. I just wish I hadn't done a hangover.
That is insane. That is, I've done lots of improv. I've done lots of singing. I've never combined the two. Oh, well, I have, because there's a good chance I'm going to forget the words in one gig.
You do that anyway when you forget
the words to some songs.
Yeah, it just makes sounds, don't you? Yeah, I'd have been fairly confident with it had I've known the songs, but I didn't know the songs, so I was basically, you can kind of tell when there's going to be a turnaround. It's like, it's going to be one soon. Is this a 4 or an 8? And then just waiting for it to start and see if it's different, and then seeing if it's a bit melodic, because a lot of their stuff is just crazy sounding, like tech. Like, there's a melodic section. I'll get the melody, and then I'll just come in and scream some random shit over it. It's so funny. But people loved it. People coming up.
It sounded really good. I mean, I wasn't at the gig, but I've seen some footage of it. They had the
videos
afterwards, and it's like, if you didn't know that it was completely fucking ad-libbed, you would never know. It really
right, Hev, please send me a clip, because we've talked about this.
Terrible phone videos.
but that's all anything. People are used to watching that shit. But I'd love to add a clip to the description, because we've talked about it. People will be listening to this, and they'll be going, oh, that's something I want to seek out. Or at least if I was listening to it, I would, because that's why I'm saying, can I have a clip?
Well, Virtual Reality have posted a little phone video of it on their Facebook, so I can link it for you if you like.
Brilliant. All right. So everybody, there'll be a link in the description. That's going to be interesting. That really is. So finishing up here, I kind of keen to sort of find out, is there a time scale here? I know you said possibly you've got, is it next singles in August?
So the next single is July the 11th.
July the 11th.
A couple of weeks time. That's called Final Time to Die. It's I would say more of the same. It's like fucking fast, fucking heavy. It's got some Slayerisms in there, which is never a bad thing. And then the EP is released on the 4th of August. Fortified with Ashes, on all streaming platforms and stuff. And as I said, then afterwards, I think my plan, and I've spoken to the PR, to Clawhammer, a bit about it, and the plan, I think, is to try and get something else out before Christmas. So as I said, we're working on 3 more songs. As I said, music's done. We're working on 3 more songs at the moment. I think Heather's pretty much done vocals for one of them, called Queen of Swords, which is sounding fucking sick. So there's 2 more basically we need to sort of think, sort of hash out the vocals for. But I think last time when we were writing the first 3, they came pretty quickly, I think, or at least from my perspective, it came pretty quickly. I think Heather came up with, here's some ideas, and then it was like, I think there were a couple of tweaks here and there, and why don't we do this here, and why don't we do this here? But it all came together pretty quickly, and then it was recorded pretty quickly. Heather managed to track all the vocals really efficiently and so on, so it shouldn't take too long. And then obviously we just send it all off to Winter down in Sphinx Studios in Brighton, and so that's kind of the plan. That's as far as the plan we've got up until probably the end of the year, and then I think we'll just see what happens next year. There's 3 more, I guess there's 3 more songs musically that we could then work on vocally. Again, whether we release those separately as a 3rd EP, whether we put the whole thing together and release it as an album, I don't know. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I mean, whether it's a label or you put it out yourselves or whatever, I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
It's a great. I mean, as a debut, EP. Really impressed, and I'll play some on the podcast as well, because it's like before the interview, because it's going to be a good idea for people to actually be able to hear, what we're talking about.
Yeah, well, thanks, man. We really appreciate you inviting us on as well. And obviously, without wanting to be a sort of kissing your ass or whatever, obviously given your pedigree, you know your shit, right? You know what you're talking about. You've been in the thrash world for fucking 35 years or whatever it is, So,
yeah, longer than that, believe it or not.
Longer than that,
Yeah, it's frightening.
Yeah, well, me too. Me too. I was 14 in 1986, so I was right in the middle of the thrash explosion. Was just when I was when I was discovering all this music, and it was just fucking unbelievable.
Well, I was 16, and the thing is now, like we're the same age basically, but 14 and 16, that's like being 20 and 30.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Those 2 years at that age are huge. You've got different groups of friends, like, you know, that, like your mates, you know, your mates are with mates with the younger brother, and the older brother has those mates, you know, and it's, but I know exactly what you mean. You were at a ripe age to absolutely, you know, just completely absorb yourself in it. That's what happened to me.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy. I mean, I didn't have any older brothers or sisters. My sister is younger than me, and so with me, it just came through. And I was a BMX kid, so I was into BMX before I discovered music. And so I was the BMX kind of group of people that from my school used to hang out, and there were a lot of older kids there. And again, you're right. So they were 15 and 6. I was like, say 13, and they were probably 15 and 16. So to me, they felt like, you know, 25 or something, you know, but they were kids as well. And I think so metal came to me through that route, you know, and one of my friends at school basically gave me this C90 and said, fucking listen to this. And one side was Power Slave and the other side was Ride the Lightning. And this would have been, you know, probably like mid 1985.
The 80s, ladies and gentlemen. Fucking, you cannot fucking knock them. Hey?
No. And my mind was just fucking, I was 13 in the middle of 85. And and I remember listening to Power Slave and just being like, fucking hell, I've never heard anything like this. And I just kept listening to it and kept listening to it and kept listening to it. Didn't even listen to side B. And my mate was then like, oh, so did you listen to side B? Did you listen to Metallica? I was like, no, fucking Maiden. He said, fucking listen to it, fucking listen to side B. So I went home and I listened to side B. And imagine that, man, the first time I'd ever heard like the beginning of Fight Fire with Fire. And I was just like, what the fuck is this? And my mind was fucking blown. That's it. So I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised in the least, because that's just phenomenal. You know, trying to get those 2 albums down your ears, you know, back to back is just ridiculous. As the first metal I'd ever heard, you know.
Well, what I found as well, because I discovered metal through my older sister's friends. They introduced me to metal, but then I discovered thrash. So I was going like, hey guys, listen to this. And of course they were all like, oh, it's too fast. And I was like, no, this is the shit. This is great. This is what's, and that was the thing. It was that dividing line between, there was like, and really, you know, we're talking about 80s here and, you know, really dating ourselves. But the point is, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know the era, here are the genres of heavy metal that existed. Heavy metal. That's it.
Exactly.
And so when thrash came along, for fuck's sake, that was for me.
Yeah, wild.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also it's like every musician is just an obsessive fan. That's why obsessive fans out there, bands love you, because that's what bands are made up of. Obsessive fans, so obsessed that actually just being a fan wasn't enough. They are, you know, we are so obsessed that we had to actually make the music, because listening to it is so good. Surely making it, you're chasing that high. It's going to be even better.
Right. Exactly. And yeah, you're right. I mean, I think I'm probably now almost more of an obsessive fan than I ever was, you know, because I think there's so much fucking great metal being released every week, you know, and it's hard to keep on top of, you know. And
that's really interesting to hear from somebody of our era as well, because there'll be a lot of people of our era listening to this going, well, really? I thought all new metal was shit.
No, I mean, the thing is, I thought that I've not been as excited about I don't mean new metal with a U. I'm talking new metal as in newly released metal. I haven't been excited since the 80s as I have in the past 3 or 4 years. I just think there's so much stuff out there that's great across all genres. You know, there's some great thrash, there's some great death metal out there. I'm not a huge black metal fan, but some of it I really love. There's some great doom stuff, and there are bands that are doing stuff which is not just a rip-off of, you know, trying to sound like Testament or trying to sound like Exodus. There's bands who are actually taking that as a starting point, but then mixing it with black metal or mixing it with death metal or mixing it with whatever it might be to create something fresh, but still with one foot in the 80s stuff that is the reason we all love it in the first place, you know?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I really do. Hey, look, guys, it's been a pleasure. And thank you for being so generous with your time as well, because I've kept you a good long while.
No, thank you. It's been great. We could speak for another 3 hours.
and don't worry, listeners, we will be. We're just not going to record it.
I can talk about metal with anybody for hours and hours, and have done on many occasions.
That's why 9 years ago I set up this podcast.
Exactly.
It had to be done. Well, look, Heather, Nige, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.